What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Welcome to our daily show where we discuss everything going on here in our country that you need to know about here on a daily basis. And there's a lot of controversy going on over this bill. This bill was set to pass that would have gave veterans health care that were exposed to burn pits, and many of them have cancer. And the bill was set to pass. It had previously gone to a vote here, and 25 Republicans had voted yes, and it had to come back for another vote here. And mysteriously, all the Republicans changed their vote at the last moment after Democratic Senator Joe Manchin changed his mind on another bill, the bill for the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, known as Build Back Better 2.0. And now the controversial Ted Cruz fist bumping another Republican senator after they, quote, got back at the Democrats. The problem here is that it's the veterans paying the price here for this. Here's a little bit more context you'll hear from Republicans and Democrats. Here's Democratic Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. Take a listen.
And it's got to stop. And to become a political pawn, to lower ourselves to this, is stunning to me. I'm here for these people. I'm here because the American people called us to be there for them. It's their time to step up.
Veterans groups are expected to camp out on the Capitol steps for a fifth day, calling on lawmakers to pass the PACT Act, a bill that would expand aid for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. It comes after Senate Republicans blocked the bill last week, with Republican Senator Pat Toomey facing the most criticism. He delayed the legislation over a $400 billion spending amendment, but said he's working to change the bill in a way that wouldn't change a penny in funding for veterans programs.
What I'm trying to do is change a government accounting methodology that is designed to allow our Democratic colleagues to go on an unrelated $400 billion spending spree that has nothing to do with veterans and that won't be in the veteran space.
All right, joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Are Democrats using this bill to go on some sort of spending spree? What's going on here?
No, that's ridiculous. But let's make it clear. Pat Toomey was one of the 14 Republicans who opposed it the first time around. He has been consistent. He does not support spending this money on veterans. That's his prerogative. What is harder to explain is why 25 of his colleagues supported the bill the first time it came through the Senate. And then when it came back for a procedural reason, they all opposed it. This question of whether the money in the bill is mandatory spending or discretionary spending, that didn't change. It has always been mandatory spending. There is nothing substantive that has changed in the legislation. So Pat Toomey all along has opposed this bill. That's his right as a senator. But why did 25 Republicans switch their vote? The only thing that changed was that this deal on climate change and lowering prescription drug costs was announced by Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer. It seems that anger over that agreement is what caused these 25 Republicans to take out their frustration on veterans.
So that's what I was going to ask you, is why did they change their vote? And so they're mad about something else? What? They're mad about Dems looking too good?
Well, listen, I remember the first vote on the floor when 84 Democrats and Republicans voted for it. I remember Pat Toomey being on the floor lobbying against the bill. Mm-hmm. It's not as if his Republican colleagues didn't know his objections to this decision to make the funding mandatory, but they still all voted for it. The only thing that changed after that was, not the strength of Pat Toomey's arguments. What changed is the fact that we got closer to passing climate change legislation. And, Republicans all along have been pretty clear about their interest in stopping legislation that they think is good for America simply to punish Democrats. Before they stopped the PACT Act, they had threatened to block something called the CHIPS Act, which is a bill to restart microchip manufacturing in America, a bill that Republicans supported, but they announced to the world they would oppose it simply to punish Democrats for finally getting consensus on the issue of climate change. So this is a tactic that Republicans have been pretty unapologetic about using for the last last month. It's a pretty strange one to decide to hurt your country, to oppose legislation that's good for your country simply because you're angry that Democrats are moving forward on climate change legislation.
Senator Murphy, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. As I'm sure you know, Senate Majority Leader Schumer suggested this bill would come up for a vote in the next couple of days. And Senator Cornyn from Texas suggests this time, in a tweet, says it will pass, suggesting that, yes, indeed, it was being held a few days out of spite. But you mentioned the climate change legislation, and I wanted to get you on the big picture reconciliation bill, this deal struck by Schumer and your colleague, Senator Manchin. We've been talking about it all morning. All eyes now on Senator Sinema. Do you believe she will come along and vote for this bill, allowing it to pass?
I certainly would endeavor to speak for Senator Sinema. She's a friend. I know her well, having written the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the gun bill, with her. She'll come to her own decision. But obviously, there are many elements of this bill that Senator Sinema supports and frankly, wrote the prescription drug provisions in this bill that allows for the federal government to negotiate directly with the drug companies. Those provisions are really due to Senator Sinema's hard work. So it'll be her decision ultimately. Obviously, you're in a 50-50 Senate. You need every single vote. And, those of us who care about this bill will be making the case to Senator Sinema that it's good for the country and good for Arizona.
Senator Murphy, I'm curious what your thoughts are about Speaker Pelosi visiting Taiwan. A lot of talk about whether she should go or not. It does look, according to certain reports, that she is going to be going to Taiwan. Do you support that? And if she does go, what does she need to say on the ground there?
Listen, it's up to Speaker Pelosi to make that decision for herself. I'm not in the business of giving her advice. I think it would be important for her to re-articulate our current Taiwan policy. And more broadly, if this country is going to create a different policy on Taiwan, if we are going to choose to give some kind of implicit security guarantee, then let's make that decision purposefully. I do worry a little bit about accidentally creating a new policy that provides a security guarantee without that going through the United States Congress, being vetted by the administration. I'm not saying that the Speaker's trip by itself creates that new policy, but we've got to be careful here, because if we are going to step up and agree to defend Taiwan, well, then that requires an enormous amount of new defense expenditure, a repositioning of our forces. Let's do that in a thoughtful way.
Isn't that our stance right now? Or isn't that the understanding that if mainland China invades Taiwan, that the United States would defend Taiwan?
It actually, I would argue it is not. Our position is that we will assist Taiwan in defending itself, and that historically has meant being a security partner, providing them with defense material. But of course, this whole policy of strategic ambiguity has meant that it has been unclear whether the United States would come to the defense of Taiwan. It may be that it is in our security interest to do that, but we have purposefully left that question unanswered over the years. You could argue whether that's a good policy or a bad policy, but thus far, our decision has been to support Taiwan's ability to defend itself and leave slightly open this question of whether the U.S. forces are going to come to Taiwan's defense. I really don't think that that's a bad policy to keep China guessing. And if we're going to change that policy, then let's just do it thoughtfully and purposefully.
What would be the impact and this is not a leading question. I'm not suggesting what policy position I think you or other members of the Senate should take. I'm just genuinely curious what your thoughts are on what the impact on international security would be if Vladimir Putin were allowed to maintain, hold gains that he made by illegally invading Ukraine, and then we allowed China to hold any gains they would make in a possible invasion of Taiwan.
So I think you are right to make the case that these two are interconnected. I think the most important thing we can do right now to prevent China from invading Taiwan is to kick Russia out of Ukraine. There's no question that President Xi is watching Putin's degree of success. He is watching to see if the West, if the United States and Europe lose interest in Ukraine. And if we do, then I think it potentially gives him a green light. So we are on the cusp of the post-World War II order where big nations didn't change their borders through force coming apart. And I think right now, the most important thing we can do to stop China from making a move on Taiwan is to make clear to the Ukrainians that we are with them. We are with them today and we are with them in the future to make sure that they ultimately regain their own sovereignty.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to say the least. And yeah, good. Let me know your thoughts here. Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan definitely complicates things. We'll have to see. We actually had a bit of a breakthrough from Russia and Ukraine here. You can see here. Jon Stewart, who hosted the talk show, he's actually become involved in this because he gave that fiery speech here. And he's back here again, just saying, Congress really putting the, for lack of a better word, he's saying, not our veterans are the ones being harmed here because of. He said, Congress, they live forever. They're tortoises. If you heard that speech I played here the other day here, here's what Jon Stewart has to say, and says, our veterans should not be the ones being harmed here. And we see this time and time again from Democrats and Republicans can't come together for the American people. Here's what Jon Stewart has to say.
It's interesting. You've always been very cynical in some ways, correctly so, about sort of how Washington operates, how politics operates. Here you have thrown yourself in the middle of it on a couple of different bills. How much more cynical are you now, if that's possible?
It's a pretty difficult place to see how it works because they're so insulated and isolated from the real people whose lives are affected by these various provisions. Look, a government by the people, of the people, yes. But the clause they always seem to forget is for the people, for them. And these are real people. I've been with them for 4 years fighting through this. I've seen them through their defeats and their victories. But here's the other thing, Chuck. I've seen them die. We've had veterans who were advocates alongside us, Sergeant Wesley Blatt, Captain Kate Hendricks Thomas, who died while fighting for this bill, sick, utterly incapacitated by the injustices and the illnesses that they've been dealing with.
Yeah.
And yet they decided to spend this last precious times of their lives fighting so that the other men and women that they were brothers and sisters with in the military never have to go through this. And so the outrageousness of their inability to see the human toll that their parliamentary, and I'm trying desperately not to curse.
I hear you. I appreciate that.
I'm on a respectable network, I believe. This is probably
no, the FCC does have a little
nationally televised. So I'm desperately trying not to curse. But the injustice that is being done is so outrageous, and the reasons for it so utterly unrelated to any of the funding or any of the other things. You know what this is, Chuck? They basically said to veterans on June 16th, the 15-year fight that you never should have had to go through to get the health care and benefits that you earned from your sacrifice and service in the defense of this country. Here it is. And then a month later, they went, April Fools.
Yeah, let me know your thoughts here. And then you got Senator Pat Toomey, who voted no on the bill, takes a jab at what he says, quote, pseudo-celebrities, after comedian Jon Stewart blasted him for voting against the veteran health care bill. But he voted against the veteran health care bill the first time around and the second time around. So he just basically didn't want to give the veterans the health care at all from the beginning to the end. He just didn't think they deserved it at all, ever. So he just didn't think that the money was worthwhile. You let me know your thoughts here. I personally think that our veterans do deserve it either way. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Another interesting revelation that we're learning here is the bill that Senator Joe Manchin is writing, backing part of, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, includes billions of dollars of taxes on the oil sector. You can see this here from Bloomberg. Yeah, this that was announced here could cost the oil industry $25 billion in new taxes. Many people think that the oil industry needs to pay some taxes on their windfall taxes, that it's been called, as they're gouging the American people here with the amount of profit they're making. The legislation, which the Senate may get as a vote here as soon as, well, now this week, would reiterate and increase a long lapsed tax on crude and imported petroleum products to 16.4 cents per gallon. According to a summary of the plan released Sunday by the Senate's Tax Writing Committee, a similar proposal included in the House-passed Build Back Better Act would have raised nearly $25 billion over a 10-year period. Over a 10-year period, according to a congressional estimate. The Superfund tax, which previously stood at 9.7 cents per barrel unit, lapsed at the end of 1995, is paid by refiners. It's not paid by customers, it's paid by refiners and other importers to help fund the cleanup of hazardous waste sites. In addition to increasing the tax, the Senate proposal would index the fee to inflation. It places a new first-time fee on methane emission, rising to as much as $1,500 a ton, and increases the royalty rate companies pay to the government for oil and gas produced on federal land. Yeah, so let me know your thoughts here in the comments and what they might do with all this money here, the government. I'll keep you up to date here with everything going on here in our country on a daily basis. So make sure to subscribe down below to our YouTube channel. It's completely free to do so. And click the bell icon so you get notifications when we go live here with new videos, which is every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will keep you up to date here on a daily basis. You can click here to see my newest video next, and here is a major details from Senator Joe Manchin and some checks that are going to start going out here this week, actually. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.